In a shock to nobody, because we know when it comes to this league, numbers go out the damn window. In a shock to nobody, the most nationally televised games are the Fever, followed by Paige Beckers, followed by New York, followed by the Aces. If anything, I'm surprised the Wings have 36, but a surprise to nobody, except for these dumbasses that are involved in anything WNBA. They're going mad that the Aces own the most nationally televised games.
Every season promises change, but when the national TV schedule drops, it often feels like the same story being retold with even more noise and stronger reactions. Once again, the Indiana Fever find themselves at the center of the most televised matchups, while rival fans flood social media trying to figure out what it all means. Is this simply the market responding to demand, or are we witnessing a deeper shift in how visibility in basketball is shaped, and who ultimately gains when attention becomes the league's most powerful currency?
First, before we get into Media Day, let's talk about the fact that the Indiana Fever have once again made history today, because it was announced that all 44 of the Indiana Fever's games will be nationally televised in 2026. The only WNBA team to have all of their games nationally televised.
Somehow, the moment the schedule drops, the entire conversation around women's basketball flips into a full-scale online debate within minutes. Not because anything new has actually happened, but because seeing the national TV listings is enough to reignite the same arguments, only this time with even more intensity, louder voices, and sharper divisions than before.
I'm not joking when I say this. So the Indiana Fever played... The Las Vegas Aces last year, if I'm not mistaken, had 39 nationally televised games. Caitlin Clark played in 13 nationally televised games. Caitlin Clark, more people watched those 13 Caitlin Clark games than watched the Aces 39 games, if I'm not mistaken. And I could be, I tried to do the maths on this. It's either that what I said is either correct or very close to being correct.
Once again, the Indiana Fever sit near the top of the national TV broadcast count, and that one detail is enough to trigger an immediate wave of reaction. Rival fan bases push back in disbelief, and within minutes the discourse splits into long threads, heated debates, and competing explanations, some insisting it's entirely logical, others arguing it makes no sense at all depending on which side of the conversation they're standing on.
So today, in the Media Day availability, Indiana Fever's guard Caitlin Clark came out and made a bold statement, and she's claiming herself to be the best transitional player in the WNBA. But is she really? Guys, did Caitlin Clark finally stand up for herself and actually say some things that she's always been wanting to say? Well, she basically today came out and said that she was the best transitional player in the WNBA. Now, let's look at it like this. The Caitlin Clark junkies have always complained about, hey, give the ball to Caitlin Clark, get out of Caitlin's way and let her do everything.
The pattern is no longer new, yet it still triggers the same reaction each time it appears, an ongoing split in perspective. On one side are traditionalists who argue that broadcast priority should be earned through championship history and competitive success. On the other are those who see it as a reflection of modern sports media, where attention, engagement, and audience pull increasingly shape visibility more than records or preseason expectations.
So now, on to Media Day. You know, everybody was there. It was a big day for the Indiana Fever. And, you know, just watching Caitlin Clark, the way she carries herself, the way she, you know, the clips that I have seen of her in practice, it is clear that she is running the floor, okay? It is clear that she is back. It is clear that she is a team leader, that she is a fearless basketball player.
The Indiana Fever now sit at the center of a much larger conflict that goes beyond on-court performance. Their position in the national conversation is increasingly shaped by something more complex: the scale of public interest their games generate compared to almost every other team in the league. that interest didn't build slowly or predictably. It surged quickly, forcing broadcasters, analysts, and rival fan bases to adjust in real time, whether they were prepared for it or not. As a result, national TV scheduling now reflects a shift that goes beyond traditional logic. Instead of being driven purely by championship pedigree or sustained dominance, like that of teams such as the Las Vegas Aces, broadcast priority is now also influenced by audience demand and engagement. That means teams with different trajectories can appear alongside established contenders in ways that challenge older expectations of how visibility should be earned. This is where tension emerges. From the perspective of rival fans and traditionalists, it can feel like the usual hierarchy has been disrupted, where proven champions are no longer guaranteed top billing over teams still building their competitive identity. That clash between legacy-based recognition and attention-driven visibility is exactly what fuels the ongoing debate around the Fever and their place in the national spotlight.
Clark haters were dealt a harsh truth today, and that is the Indiana Fever will be having every one of their 44 games televised on national television. Now, for smart people that watch channels like mine and jump in the comment sections, people that know the game, people that know kind of what's at stake for this league, people that know kind of what led to the boom of this league, people that know why the CBA, kind of had to get renegotiated now. You guys know what's up. Like, you guys know the straw that has stirred the drink.
However, the data broadcasters rely on doesn't always match emotional expectations. And that gap is often where the frustration online begins each time the schedule is released. When viewership numbers are analyzed, certain matchups consistently outperform league averages, sometimes by significant margins that are hard to overlook in a media landscape where ratings and advertising revenue directly influence programming decisions. That creates a reinforcing cycle. Higher viewership leads to more national broadcasts, and more national broadcasts help sustain or even expand that viewership. Over time, this loop strengthens the visibility of teams that consistently draw large audiences, shaping future scheduling discussions across networks and platforms. As a result, Fever games have at times matched or surpassed audiences for established powerhouse matchups, signaling a shift in how the league is consumed, especially by casual viewers who may not follow standings closely but consistently tune in for specific teams or storylines. This is where rival fan bases become especially vocal. Their reaction is not just about individual scheduling choices, but about what those choices represent. A broader evolution in which entertainment value, narrative pull, and audience demand increasingly sit alongside competitive success in determining national visibility.
Caitlin Clark said more than just she is the best transitional player in the WNBA. She also said that she can play off the ball. And that's a lot of problems that the Caitlin Clark junkies have, because when they selected Raven Johnson as the number 10 pick in the WNBA draft, a lot of these Caitlin Clark junkies, they started crying. What is the organization doing? Is Stephanie White in that organization trying to sabotage Caitlin Clark? Why would they draft another point guard when you already have your point guard? And then, they crashing out talking about she needs the ball in her hand at all times. But
that perception fuels ongoing debate online, where fans argue over whether broadcast exposure should be earned purely through competitive success or whether it should instead reflect the realities of modern audience engagement in a media-driven sports landscape. The irony is that both perspectives hold weight. Championships and winning records remain foundational to any professional league's identity, yet the financial and cultural ecosystem of broadcasting depends heavily on what viewers are actually choosing to watch in real time. This is why comparisons to other leagues often surface in the discussion, where star power, large fan bases, and narrative-driven teams frequently dominate national broadcasts regardless of current standings. In that context, the situation doesn't look unusual at all. It looks familiar. As a result, each new national TV schedule release feels less like routine logistics and more like a statement about the league's direction, even though the reality is shaped largely by evolving viewership data tracked across the season. And the conversation becomes even more layered when considering what drives entertainment value itself. Some teams earn attention through dominance and championships, while others generate it through unpredictability, emerging talent, or matchups that consistently pull in casual viewers.
I realize that ESPN games without Caitlin Clark average like 800k. ESPN is with Caitlin Clark average 2.5 million, right? Like there's a big difference. She's basically, yeah, duh. This is about what the networks wants. They don't care about discourse. Think a team is better than the other. Who the champs are. They care about viewership. Yes, thank you. Some sense. I hate the popularity of talent skill. No having way the Aces shouldn't have the most games televised. Dude, I mean this when I say this. The Aces play puke ball. Like, the Aces actually play some of the... If you're talking about, you know what, attractive brand of basketball, I didn't think the Fever played an attractive brand of basketball last year. You put on this, what seems like is going to be the free-flowing Liberty. Sure.
This creates a layered ecosystem where success is no longer defined only by wins and losses, but also by the ability to stay relevant within an attention economy that rewards visibility alongside performance. Rival fans often find this shift difficult to accept because it challenges a long-standing belief that broadcast exposure should function primarily as a reward for competitive excellence rather than a reflection of popularity. In the current landscape, a franchise can rapidly become one of the most visible in the league through a combination of rising talent, media momentum, and audience response that reinforces itself through repeated exposure. Once that cycle begins, visibility can accelerate in ways that feel sudden compared to traditional expectations of how recognition is earned. At the same time, established contenders with championship histories may find themselves part of broader conversations about broadcast distribution, not because their performance has declined, but because viewer interest is increasingly shaped by evolving narratives, personalities, and matchups that attract wider or more casual audiences than in previous eras. This is where the intensity of fan reactions becomes more understandable. What is being debated is not just scheduling decisions in isolation, but deeper questions about identity, recognition, and what competitive success is worth in a system where cultural impact and audience demand now play a much larger role in determining visibility.
Black and white sports supporters, well, I gotta tell you, just what I wanted to see. The two worst words associated with the National Basketball Association right now is load management. That's the two words that has greatly assisted the NBA in falling from grace as the clear-cut, at one time, the clear-cut number 2 sport after the NFL in the country. Now it's not. It's like 5th, 6th.
As the season approaches, that attention doesn't just generate excitement. It also creates resistance because it forces a broader conversation about what actually drives modern sports viewership in the first place. The Fever and teams in similar spotlight positions become central to that discussion not only because of where they appear on the schedule, but because of what their visibility represents in a shifting media landscape. Meanwhile, established contenders like the Aces continue to command attention through championship pedigree and roster strength, reinforcing the traditional foundations of competitive respect. At the same time, emerging teams add new layers to the league's narrative, shaping an environment where visibility and performance are increasingly intertwined rather than separate measures of value.
Somebody do me a favor regarding the Indiana Fever. Can somebody show me proof that the Indiana Fever, the stadium is so horrible, that the locker room is toxic, that nobody wants to play on the team? I just want to see, like, proof. I know there was one time that something got yelled at Angel, and then they made monkey sounds or whatever, and that was debunked. That wasn't true. It was pretty much like setting up Indiana to be racist. And you can't necessarily talk about just some fans when you go to a football game.
In the middle of it all, rival fan bases continue reacting, debating, and analyzing each schedule release as if it reveals something deeper about the direction of the sport itself, even when much of the explanation ultimately comes down to audience behavior that is already reflected in the numbers. As long as those viewership trends continue to favor certain matchups, the conversation is unlikely to settle, because modern sports is no longer shaped by a single measure of success, but by a shifting balance between winning, storytelling, and the audiences that decide what stays in focus. What makes the discourse more intense is that it's no longer limited to hardcore fans who track standings and analytics closely. Casual viewers now play a much larger role in shaping the conversation, and that broadening of attention changes the tone of everything, from routine scheduling discussions to wider cultural debates about what the league is becoming. In earlier eras of professional basketball, national television exposure was more directly tied to championship history, established rivalries, and consistent playoff presence. But today's media environment adds another layer, where audience pull and engagement can rival traditional markers of success, especially when certain players or matchups repeatedly generate higher interest across multiple platforms.